Optical media isn't perfect. Games have been stored on CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray discs since the 90s. And while storage has increased, the same basic principles have always been at play. So what happens when these discs eventually degrade to the point where they're unusable? And when a game like Duke Nukem Forever happens, where it's hyped for a decade or more, and then bombs, whatever the reason, there's a lot of discs that basically qualify as trash. Where do they go? What happens to them? Today, gameranx wants to ask the question, where do game discs go to die? Video games can kind of feel like friends. Games can be pretty intense experiences. They can make you feel and think things that you haven't before and push you to places that you haven't been. And they stay with you for often longer than a book or movie. You kind of live in that world. It's a place that you've occupied. And when you've beaten the game or whatever scenario that causes you to stop playing it, I can't really think of too many people that throw them away. People like to put them on a shelf like books. I don't know whether it's trophy case syndrome or want to have a tangible symbol of experiences that you've had, but that's usually where they go. Frankly, it's pretty normal to feel attachment for a world and characters that you've spent so much time with, but sometimes they get traded in as well, which is a good way to go because then you're able to get new games. And in some cases, they get thrown away, especially cases where they get scratched or worn out. Sometimes it's possible to resurface a disc, not always. So when the discs finally stop being stored or stop changing hands, because you don't like your friends anymore. I'm just kidding. Or you're talking about Duke Nukem Forever, and no one buys it, so they have to figure out what to do with all those discs. They become trash. Where does trash go? Well, a lot of it goes to a garbage dump, which is basically a big pile of trash that rots over hundreds of years. But I bet you'd probably be shocked to know that a lot of garbage ends up in the ocean. And I'm not saying that if you throw a disc away, it's going to contribute to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it has an unusually credible sounding name for being a big pile of floating garbage. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. As opposed to those Bush League garbage patches in those one-horse towns out there. Bumpkins. But if you throw something out, like a game disc, which is a piece of plastic that takes a really long time to biodegrade, there is a small chance it will end up in the ocean. And if it ends up in the ocean, it'll eventually get picked up by a current, and it accumulates in one of many oceanic garbage patches. And here's a shocker, no one really wants to take credit for the garbage patches in the ocean, much less the Great Pacific one, so nobody puts up funding to clean the damn things up. There's a lot of plastic in there, from bottles of soda, to those plastic things that you put cans in that seagulls get caught in and everybody goes, oh, look at the poor seagull, all the way over to CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays, which probably contain not just movies and music, but games. To say there is zero gamer waste in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is probably irresponsible. More than 5.5 million boxes of software go into landfills and incinerators every single year. And on top of that, we're getting closer and closer to spinning discs becoming obsolete. It's not really grasping at straws to say that at least some of that ends up in the ocean. Or even to get specific, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Hell, there's most likely game systems and controllers in there for that matter. One estimate puts the size of it at 270,000 square miles, or the size of Texas, thereabouts. This would be the most sensationalist way to put it.
Wasteful gamers throwing out their used games destroy Texas-sized area of the ocean. Here's how.
Timmy, stop playing those games, you're ruining the oceans.
Only I'm not gonna say that because I don't think being a dick about it to any specific group of people is gonna do anything. The human population makes a lot of trash. The average person generates 4.3 pounds of waste a day. That's just shy of 1.4 billion pounds of waste daily. And that's just in the United States alone. So chill out and don't worry, I'm not pointing fingers at you, I don't think that you're doing anything bad. Creating waste is pretty much unavoidable for people. We don't live in virtual worlds created by game developers, we just want to spend a little time in them. And since everything in the world all wears out eventually, well, it has to go somewhere. Now believe it or not, there is something you can do. It's called becoming a planeteer.
Captain Planet.
No, I'm kidding. It's not called that. This has nothing to do with Captain Planet. It's actually just simple recycling. Believe it or not, only 25% of the United States plastic trash is recycled, which is not much considering the amount of stuff we have that's plastic and the amount of waste we make as people. Now, CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays aren't necessarily something that they collect at the Walmart for a 10-cent deposit when you give it back. In fact, not all states even do that with cans and bottles. People who live in one of those states are probably, what are you talking about? Like I said said earlier, just because you throw something away doesn't mean it's going to end up in the Pacific Ocean poisoning fish with the chemicals that it leaks out as the sun bakes it. It's possible, but it may also end up in a landfill near you, where it won't decompose quickly. It'll take a long time, which is pretty much the only way Duke Nukem is ever going to be forever. And it still lets out chemicals. They go down in the ground and they go up into the air. They incinerate garbage and it turns into smoke, and that goes up into what you're breathing. I mean, pollution just kinda sucks. To some degree, it's always gonna be a fact of life. But due to the sheer numbers of people that exist, we should be doing what we can to minimize what we put out.
Gonna take pollution down to zero.
And as far as game waste goes, games didn't used to come out on the same media that so many other things come out on. I mean, practically speaking, a CD, a DVD, and a Blu-ray are all pretty much the same thing to recycle. Back when we had game cartridges, there just wasn't a process. That's why you have incidents like the one back in 2014, where crews hired by Fuel Entertainment and Xbox Entertainment Studios dug up 881 ET cartridges buried in New Mexico. It was a game that people really didn't like and just didn't buy very much of. And they had to do something with the cartridges, so they just put them in a hole. And when they took them out of the ground, nearly 4 decades later, they were pretty much in the same condition as they were buried. Plastic takes forever to biodegrade, and when it finally does, it can turn into harmful chemicals. At the same time, plastic is extremely useful to our society. It's a pretty inexpensive material to produce that gives so many people access to technology that would otherwise be extremely expensive to obtain. Societally and culturally, plastic is actually a great thing. People who aren't in the same economic position as other people have more choices in so many areas of their life, specifically due to plastic. But it's not so great on the environment. That's why instead of using it once and then burying it or burning it or mixing it with the ocean's ecosystem, which is delicate enough as it is, gamers can actually take steps and be responsible consumers. If you're in the United States, visit cdrecyclingcenter.org for information on where to send disc media to be recycled. If you're in the United Kingdom, go to discrecycling.co.uk for a similar service. I know that not everybody is an environmentalist. I'm not asking you to be. I don't want you to subscribe to Al Gore's newsletter. I don't want you to watch any documentaries on Netflix. I'm just asking you to do the right thing. There's things we can all do to make this planet better for everyone, and there's nothing wrong with doing them.
The power is yours.
If you found this video informative in any way, please do us a big favor and click the like button. As per usual, we'll be in the comments. This is a subject that is pretty open-ended and we need to talk about it more. Also, if you're not subscribed to gameranx, now is the perfect time to do so. We upload new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video, and we will see you next time right here on gameranx.